Um, okay. Now, the house of the AA, it shows our suffering, but it's also going to show where some of our deepest spiritual experiences come from. And so how can it be both?
Because they're related.
They're related. So on one level, they're related, and suffering is going to cause spirituality. But I'm sure you know somebody who's terribly poor and suffering, and they don't become spiritual. So there is a separation as well. And that separation is going to be shown in dashas. During Mula dashas and Shula dashas, we're going to see the suffering. It's going to be the Drig dashas, the A.K. Kendrati dashas. It's going to be the spiritual dashas that are going to show the spiritual realizations. And I think Robert did A.K. Kendrati dasha the other day. And he did Drig dasha last year or the year before. So, yeah, so all that all those techniques of timing this are already out there. I found transits to be incredibly powerful. The dashas also have an effect because before the transit can actually trigger it, first the dasha has to be there. So first comes the dasha, then comes the transit. So you're going to have to take both into account. So just some examples of how the Mrityupada shows how and where the spiritual experience is coming from. There is a chart, I think it's not shown in this format here, but if you have the handout, you can see there's a woman with she has bone cancer. And she has the AA in the 6th house. And it was when she had bone cancer and she's sick in the hospital, she started getting visions of this white goddess that would come to her, and very intense spiritual experiences. She'd go crazy. She would hear a voice show up that would start talking to her, telling her about the future, and how she reacted to that we'll go into in a minute. We can tell how she reacted as well from the Mrityupada. But
That's the Rahu and Scorpio with the AA, right?
yeah, she has Rahu with the AA.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's just showing.
Makes sense that
She's hearing voices. So the spiritual experience it's a very, some of us have spiritual experiences that are very nice. You're just out in the woods and everything comes alive. And so there's multiple ways that this can happen. And it's going to be seen from Mrityupada, how this is coming about, how it's being triggered. And we see that it's the 6th house of disease. It was when she got sick. It was when she realized that she might have to lose her leg because she had bone cancer in her leg. And she's in her 20s. So it was quite a traumatic experience and that brought all this up. If we look at Satya Sai Baba, he also has the Mrityupada in the 6th house. And now there's a story about him, Sai Baba. It's his 2nd incarnation as a Sai Baba. And in his previous incarnation, he said, I'll be back in 8 years, when he was dying. And then later a child was born, and I don't remember his birth name, but he was a normal kid up until he got bit by a scorpion. And when he was bit by the scorpion, he had some fevers and things of that nature, and he suffered from that. And it was at that point that all his past life stuff was triggered in him, and he remembered everything. And a year or 2 later, he left and went back to his ashram and began teaching from age 8, I think. Do you know? Yeah. From like age 8, he began teaching again, because he remembered his. So this spiritual experience happened when a scorpion bit him. So it was the 6th house of disease.
Were there a lot of malefic aspects to it too?
I can't remember his chart right now.
Like Rahu?
Yeah. Do you want to pull up his chart? Do you have his chart, Nitin?
Is it
Okay.
on your...
Yeah, but I don't want to dig it up. What's it say?
It says Mars.
Okay, so the
Your write-up, you mentioned Mars.
yeah, the A8 was with Mars.
Scorpion, okay.
Now we have Ramana Maharshi, and his AA is in the 5th house. And the story of his spiritual experience was he was actually studying. He was at home studying, and then all of a sudden, while studying, he started to think about death, and he realized that he just had he began contemplating the fact of death, and he laid down, and as if to see what death was, and he stopped breathing. He held his breath and tried to imagine himself dying. And he actually left his body, saw himself being burned on the pyre, and had an incredible, extreme experience of realizing that even when the body dies, that he's something that is beyond the body. Now this happened while he was doing his homework. Fifth house. Okay? He wasn't at, so he didn't get sick. He wasn't at the temple. He was doing his homework. So we can see that where the AA is, it's also going to show the situation around our spiritual experiences. And, okay. Yeah, so in the same way how it shows how we suffer, it also shows. Let's go down to. And so houses from Rityapada. Now with the Arudas, depending on the different Arudapada, different houses tend to be important. From the Mrityupada, the Kendras become very important. And as because it's a moon Karaka, and with Saturn secondary Karaka, the Kendras become very important. So when we look at the Arudapadas, when we look at the A8, the Kendras are going to be very important. And the two most important ones are the 7th and the 10th. Now, the 10th house, it shows aspects of spiritual experiences and the learning that will come from them. And I wrote this a while ago, but I'll say that in another way. It represents how we deal with the spiritual experience when it comes up. Now this woman that had bone cancer that I mentioned previously, she has an Amavasya moon, 10th from her A8. Now when she had this experience of a beautiful white goddess coming and giving her blessings, this voice that was telling her the future, her first fear is, oh my gosh, someone's telling me about the future. She started freaking out because it would happen. She got afraid, like, where's this voice coming from? What's going on? She became totally confused. This goddess, and she would explain it in great detail. She says, oh, I don't believe in it. It's not a real manifestation. I don't believe in gods and goddesses. You know, yet she had this vision, and she talked, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Then on the next hand, she says, I don't believe in it. It was just, some hallucination or something. So her ability to digest and deal and actually learn from that experience was minimal because of the Amavasya moon. Now, if we look at the charts of, let's see, who do I list here? Satya Sai Baba has Jupiter in the 10th house. Ramana Maharshi has Venus and Mercury. Aurobindo has Hamsa Yoga. So we see that the people who are really able to harness these spiritual experiences and really integrate them so that it really they can live from it. Because you can have a spiritual experience like this woman did and totally deny everything, suppress everything that you learned, and try and continue to live the way you were living before. Or you can take that spiritual experience and use it as a stepping stone to keep going. So planets in the 10th house from the Mrityupada are going to relate to how we deal with these spiritual experiences when they come up. Okay. Now the 7th house is also very important. And the 7th house, as we saw, with the Rudas, it's always in an axis. So axes are very important. But now with this technique, it's just the Mrityupada. We're not doing which is stronger. So we have to know different techniques have different ways to look at the Mrityupada. So with this technique, we just are looking at the Mrityupada. And with this technique, we'd also use both Mrityupadas. Because both are going to show spiritual experiences, and they're going to show the different types of spiritual experiences we're going to have. And the weaker one will generally come first, and the stronger one will come second in life. So 7th house from the Mrityupada, it shows the doorway to spiritual experiences. It shows how we go and actually, because it's how we can get our spiritual experiences. Why would somebody go into a cave? The Tibetan Lamas, they do 12-year retreats where they sit in a cave for 12 years, not communicating to anybody. Other people go out into the woods and just hike Some people would rather go to a meditation retreat for. So how we choose to go and try and get these spiritual experiences in our life are connected to the seventh house from the Mrityupada. Now, as I was doing my research on this, so that was Guruji's teaching. It's the doorway to the spiritual experience and how we get it. So what does that mean? So I went through multiple charts just looking at what it means. And when we look at the chart of Chaitanya, he has Moon and Ketu in Leo, opposite his A8. And when we're looking at spiritual experience in this way, we're going to look at the as I think someone was mentioning the other day, Aries, the fire signs, are the most spiritual signs. And so he had this Leo opposite. It's the Agni Tattva. So it was very high. He didn't need to hold on to anything. He just chanted and loved, and that was enough for him. So his connection was very strong, and the doorway was very free. Where if we look at Ramakrishna Paramhamsa, he has Capricorn with an exalted Mars opposite his Mrityupada. So it's an exalted Mars, meaning he has incredible ability to get spiritual experience. But it's also a Kali Yuga Rashi. So if we look at how he chose to get spiritual experiences, is he worshipped Kali. And he did the full Kali sadhana until he got visions of Kali and he had spiritual experiences with her. And then all of a sudden, that wasn't enough. So he became a Krishna devotee, and to fully become Krishna, he started dressing like Radha to worship Krishna. And so they say that because he was an incredible, powerful tantric, we see this exalted Mars, he actually grew breasts and started to have a period, like he physically transformed his body.